Good evening, everybody. Nice to see you all here despite the chill, because we're below the below, huh? So it's really great to have you here. So first of all, I want to tell you, please, we're not in court, so you can come and go as you please. And we're going to be a little bit oversubscribed tonight, so please come and sit also in the middle seats. And if you have to leave in the middle, you live in the middle. It's not a problem. But there are seats here, so just please flow in and enjoy the evening. So my name is Paola Antonelli, and I work here at the Museum of Modern Art. I'm the director of the R&D department, a department of 1.5, but a very active one. And I'm also senior curator of architecture and design here. And I'd like to tell you that Paula Pechikova and I just launched the new MoMA R&D website. You see the URL there, and you can find almost all of the past salons there. I say almost because there were some that could not be broadcast, and and they were the tastiest ones. I'm sorry, but still, almost all of them. So if you want to go and look at the past videos, if you want to tweet it, if you want to let the world know, there it is, and you'll find there. What? The scepter of power is not working. Oh, it's the other one. That's why. Because it's the old-fashioned one, which is my favorite, also with the laser beam. Perfect. So, and you'll find there also the latest salons, the one on philanthropy from last month, fair and unfair, all of the good old favorites. But tonight, we're all here gathered to speak about bigger data. And why do we call it bigger data? Because we wanted to give a little bit of a slant to the conversation, but we didn't really know how to do it without being too facetious. But in truth, this idea of big data has become such a refrain, and it's so filled with cliches and also with big truths, and there's so much potential in it that we wanted to just give it a little bit of a twist. But in truth, you can see from the anagram over there that in the past 4 years, the use of the word big data has skyrocketed, or the term, or the two words big data has skyrocketed. It has skyrocketed because it has hit mass communication, because it has hit mass imagination, because it has hit the discourse that happens around the way we live, around privacy, around what will happen in the future with talks of singularity and dystopia of all kinds. And tonight we're going to discuss, I'll only scratch the surface as usual, with 4 great individuals and with all of you. We know very well that talking about big data takes 15,000 conferences that get to the moon. You know those diagrams that show how much data we produce a day? That's how many conferences we would need in order to talk about big data exhaustively. But we're going to start with a little bit of it tonight. And you see, these are some of the stereotypes and the cliches about big data that are gathered from a research by the Pew Research Center, in which the researchers asked several really authoritative people to think of the role of big data in 2020. So by 2020, the use of big data will improve our understanding of ourselves and the world. That's good. Manipulation and surveillance are at the heart of their big data agendas. That's bad. Humans, rather than machines, will still be the most capable of extracting insight and making judgments using big data. Statistics can still lie. I find that good. And then the rich will profit from big data and the poor will not. Bad. The funny thing is that you could take big data out and put nanotechnology in, and it would be kind of the same, right? So what is clear is that big data is this new unknown cornucopia of technology that can contain all the good and all the evil in the world. And we're trying to see how we can cope with it in museums and in the world at large. So there used to be, once upon a time, small data. And you see here the census of the United States in 1790. It was about counting people. There were 3,000 and some. And in 1854, small data, again, discrete pointillistic data. The very, very famous map by John Snow that shows the clusters of cholera in London in 1854. They were all around a public fountain. So it's discrete data that are gathered and statistics applied. Or even the principles of scientific management by Frederick Taylor in 1911, in which Taylor really measured the performance of workers, especially in a steel working company in Pennsylvania, with a stopwatch, and then deduced ideas and deduced tables to really understand how work can be improved or performance could be improved. This is small data, and there's beautiful visualizations of this small data. The Statistical Atlas of the United States Church Accommodations from 1870 that showed the different types of denominations of churches in the states of the United States, quite beautiful, according to Baptist, Catholic. It was quite a beautiful visualization. Or on the right-hand side, the Statistical Atlas of the US between 1790 and 1890 by types of population. If you cannot read well, the orangey in the center is native stock, and then you have British, German, colored. I think there's very small, there's Irish, quite big, then very small Italians, and then there's others. We don't know what that are, but it's quite interesting to see how already visualization designers were at work dealing still with small data. What's the difference with small data? Between small data and big data. It's a difference, it's almost like opening a big faucet. It's a difference in speed, in availability, and in the way they are gathered. So here is the NSF definition and NIH. Big data refers to large, diverse, complex, longitudinal, and or distributed data sets like anything, generated from instruments, sensors, internet transactions, blah, 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 and all or other digital sources available. So big data is pretty much everything. Gartner Inc. says that big data is high volume, high velocity, and high variety information assets that demand cost-effective, innovative forms of information processing for enhanced insight and decision making. Oh my God. And you know, I mean, sometimes I have a hard time defining design, so here you go. So it's pretty much everything and anything. And here are some of those drama slides, right? Every day we produce 25 and 18 zeros bytes of data. Or every day we get 174 newspapers. Or each year we go to 2,000 billion gigabytes. I mean, I have a hard time dealing with 2 zeros. Can you imagine these? Every minute we produce 204 million email messages, 2 million Google search queries. This is every minute. We spend $272,000 in e-commerce, 3,600 new photos shared on Instagram, 100,000, see I cannot read the zeros, 100,000 tweets every minute, and 48 hours of new YouTube videos. Oh my, Mark Hansen was telling me before, sometimes there's something sublime about these numbers and these slides. Yes, and just like the sublime, it's also horrid to see how these things get visualized. Oh, I forgot Facebook, 684,000 bits of Facebook content. And of course, the Internet of Things is going to make things better and worse because there's the whole cornucopia of data that are gathered by sensors of all kinds that are proliferating even more. So it's going to be more of that soon to come. And once again, you understand that the curation, if we want to call it that way, the interpretation, the translation, the choice of the pointers is extremely important right now. How could this big data be significant? This is a report from McKinsey in 2011, creating transparency in organizational activities that can be used to increase efficiency. Kind of reminds me of Taylor a little bit here. 2, enabling more thorough analysis of employee and systems performances in ways that allow experiments and feedback. Oh boy, this is hyper Taylor. Segmenting populations in order to customize actions. This is a little more gentle and could make things better for us. Replacing supporting human decision making with automated algorithms. I think we're all feeling pretty good about that in this room, even though there are the singularity fearfuls that might dissent. And then last but not least, and that's the one that we like the most, innovating new business models, products, and services. That's our world, and that's where we really stand. But curation is important. And this is David Burstein, that is the founder of Generation 18, which is a youth-run voter engagement organization. And he says, as long as the growth of big data is coupled with growth of refined curation and curators, it will be an asset. Without those curators, the data will become more and more plentiful, overwhelming, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, true. So it's about making sense of the data. So gathering data is easy. Making sense of them is what is really complicated. I really like this term, New Yorkology. You know, data can be localized and needs to be interpreted in a smart way. Michael Flowers was appointed by Bloomberg a few years ago to create the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics. And one of their most important accomplishments was statistically find out which restaurants were not getting rid of their used oil in the right way. So, you know, it's kind of funny. It was like this Sherlock Holmes. There are some seats here. Come on over. Come on over. Come on over. There are seats. Hey, Dolphy. No, there are a few here. Please come. So by looking, it was a little bit like the map of cholera. By looking at the clusters, you know, the restaurants that did not have proper declaration of having disposal, blah, 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 they, instead of sending inspectors to all the restaurants in New York City, if you want, there's more here, to all these restaurants in New York City, they were able to like zero in on the ones that were particularly kind of liable to be delinquent. And you see all the data about New York City. We can really go into this pornography here. Stuyvesant is the high school with highest SAT scores in the city. 26,230 tons is the average amount of paper collected by the sanitation department in a month, and so on and so forth. And you know, there is data porn. We know it. You know, it's nothing new. Data is revolutionizing the way many different industries and sectors are operating. And there are some that are particularly promising, you know, like health is incredibly interesting. There's this Mount Sinai experiment that's happened. Researcher Joel Dudley worked with more than 30,000 Mount Sinai patients that declared, that allowed their information to be shared with, come closer, there are like 3, 4, 5 seats here, that were able to disclose their data. And they were able to really think of preventative care also, you know, because it's about aggregating them and trying to also presume that there's going to be some future behaviors and understanding also the causation and the connection between different types of diseases. So it is really quite a huge possibility that is happening right now in healthcare. When it comes to politics, well, we know about what happened a few years ago with Facebook that kind of pushed some, I don't remember how many, I'm looking for the notes here, I cannot find it anymore, but it was able to guide a lot of its users to vote just by creating this kind of peer pressure and letting them know which of their friends had already gone. So it kind of created this chain reaction whereby many more of this particular data set of people went to vote. So in a way, big data could save politics or could also manipulate politics, you know, depending on how it is used. Another sector, of course, where big data is predominant is online dating. And there's this really interesting study that was conducted by Wired together with, I'm going to tell you, online data. So it was OkCupid co-founder that was also a Harvard mathematician, Christian Rudder, together with Match.com director Jim Talbot and Wired. So they started looking at the kind of characteristics that really flew on OkCupid and Match.com. And Joseph Reyes is this designer that visualized them all. So it was about the vocabulary and how people really liked to present themselves and what really flew. So you see here surfing, surf yoga, London, yoga, surfing athlete between males and females. There was also this great comparison between Metacritic ratings of attractiveness amongst actors and instead OkCupid attractiveness ratings. So it was interesting to see how the real world can differ sometimes from intellectuals that rate actors' attractiveness. And also at the end, the single most attractive band that they could mention was Radiohead. So let me tell you, our best advice to people is learn to surf, listen to Radiohead, mind your grammar, use Tinder, OkCupid, Match, and Grindr on Sunday, watch Homeland, stop listing your eyes as your best feature because nobody cares, and please, please make eye contact with the camera and smile with your teeth in your profile picture, all right? So just in case, this is proven by big data. Of course, I don't know how many of you read the article in the New Yorker that was about affective computing and Rose Picard at the MIT Media Lab and the company that was started by one of her pupils. But you know, face recognition was the stuff of science fiction. Now is the stuff of reality. It's used a lot by advertising company and by opinion companies, and also by sci-fi writers. It's used to think of a dystopian future. You see up on top, of course, Minority Report, but then at the bottom you see Person of Interest. I don't know how many of you are hooked to Person of Interest. I like the fact that it's in New York City. Of course, this harks back to the past of science fiction. I mean, the conversation in 1974 was the same thing. Gene Hackman was dealing with the same fear and nightmare of surveillance, only he didn't have big data yet, or at least not in the same amount. So person of interest is like today's conversation. And I have to say that Tommy Silverman was kind enough. Are you here, Tommy? I wanted to thank you if you're here. But he brought back to my memory Harry Seldon, who was the psychohistoriographer that was at the basis of the Foundation series by Isaac Asimov, a mathematician that could deduct from data how history would unfold in the centuries to come. So the idea of data being predictive in a way that is almost stunning is not new. But what is really interesting is how predictive they can be of the now. And that's what many data companies are working on. Rather than trying to think of things many years from now, which could be a quite philosophical approach, it's about trying to think how they will be in the short term and therefore making also money and predictions of that kind about them. Of course, it's not only nice opinion and advertising companies, it's also the NSA and the government of the United States that deals with it. And USIGINT is the document that was leaked by Snowden a few years ago, in which the NSA declared that anyone, anywhere, anytime could be monitored and data gathered about them, and that they wanted to dramatically increase the mastery of the global network. And just last year, the Executive Office of the President released a kind of compensatory report that you can see there, which is big data, seizing opportunities, preserving value. So we go from the dark side to the light side as a way to correct everything into a sort of a gray area. But it really is clear that big data can be used in whatever way you want to use it, depending on who you are. E-Verify is a system that's been set up by Homeland Security and another national office about immigration to let employers check quickly the immigration status of prospective employees. The problem is that, like pretty much anything that comes out of the government when it comes to websites and digital technology, it's completely screwed up. For instance, it abbreviates some of the last names, creating some terrible situations for people that are absolutely eligible for employment and instead get cut out. So it's generated, because of its imprecision, a lot of trouble. And it's very clear that if we fail to balance the human values that we care about, like privacy, confidentiality, transparency, identity, and free choice, with the compelling uses of big data, our big data society risks abandoning these values for the sake of innovation and expediency. Sometimes it's not even forsaking the values, it's about doing things right. And we know that the government is trying to fix its technical setup, so we hope that they'll do it fast and well. The problem also with marketing products. You're all familiar with the father that showed up at the Target store a few years ago, completely really angry because his 16-year-old daughter was receiving advertising for Pampers and other baby products. Well, there's metrics that can identify possible pregnancy right away, and stores know about it. For instance, if you go into a Target store, you might be 13 and a woman, and if you start asking for unscented lotion, supplements like calcium, magnesium, zinc, hand sanitizers, and washcloths, you might be pregnant, and Target is going to send you advertising for Pampers. And that's just one particular example, but Andrew Pohl, statistician for Target, was quoted in the New York Times in 2012 saying, "Just wait, we'll be sending you coupons for things you want before you even know you want them." So it really is something that is already happening. And the episode of Uber posting on Facebook about their God's view capabilities that enabled them to see and gather whether people were having one-night stands, even politicians in Washington, D.C., was another reminder of the power of big data. The one that you see on the left is the Uber God view of San Francisco, and the one you see on the right is one of their heat maps. The heat map is also controversial because it allows drivers to see where there's more requests and to move onto those areas. So ultimately, it's a fine balance about what's in the interest of the consumer. I hate that word, what's in our interest and in their interest. And big data is there at the watershed. But as Dana, our good Dana, who's not here tonight because she just had a baby, said famously, the internet magnifies the good, bad, and ugly of everyday life. It's true, and so do big data. Big data really open up this universe of possibilities for good and evil. Of course, these things will be used for good, and of course, they'll be used for bad and ugly. And she reminds us how sci-fi is filled with this example. Another example of the use of big data is the one that's done by Reza Eden and Jean-Baptiste Michel, who just, a few years ago came out with this book, Uncharted, Big Data as a lens on human culture. So they also use big data retroactively to understand big shifts in culture. And the diagram that you see at the bottom shows n-grams for names of several, oh my God, what's the name of the artists that were banned by the Nazi? Huh? Yeah, degenerate, thank you. Several degenerate artists and how they were banned from general culture during those years. I mean, their names hardly appeared in any book or in any form of communication. So you can control reputations, you can control history by controlling the frequency with which, and we know it very well also because of all the search engines, certain names and certain words appear. It's a very powerful tool. Visualization is also a very powerful tool because we've been talking about data, we've been talking about interpretation, but sometimes form is one of the strongest forms of communication, you know, just like the effectiveness and the elegance of how data are communicated. And here is an example of the work of Jer Thorpe. There are so many data visualization designers, and some of you are also here. It's one of the most fascinating and beautiful fields of design right now. And you know, Jer says data visualizations have two broad purposes: for data reduction, which are summary graphics, and for data revelation. I like that, reduction or revelation. It's very important, and that's how it's used. More work by Jer here, visualization of how many times communism at the bottom and terrorism at the top appeared in the New York Times from 1981 to 2009. How interesting, right? How they are inversely proportional. Another beautiful visualization, $1 million blocks. This is in the collection of MoMA. Blocks in Brooklyn where the city spends more than $1 million a year to keep people either in prison or in halfway houses. So a sort of a measure of entropy, but visualized in a really dramatic way. Or for Martin Wattenberg and Fernanda Viegas, this is a little old but fantastic, the editing wars for Wikipedia entries. This was the editing wars for abortion. So every color is a different editor, and over time you see them like fighting each other and correcting each other, and it becomes a beautiful visualization. Museums. How do museums use data? They use data a lot. And it's very funny because in the past few months, there's been a lot of job announcements from museums all over the country for database specialists and data analysts. See, LACMA, MFA, the Metropolitan, and we are also doing our part. It's very important. We've done it forever, you know, to gather information about our audience. And you could say that probably we're amongst the most benign of possibilities for gathering data, but we're doing it too. And we do it also in the way we frame our research as curators. This is what Alfred Barr thought that the evolution of modern art was in 1935, and this is what Leah Dickerman, my colleague, thought that the evolution of Cubism was in 2012. So it goes from a deterministic link of isms to a network of people that are gathered by this love of innovation in art. And this is one of the most recent experiments that was just released a few days ago. It's Object Photo. It's a way to look, many ways to look at the collection of photography. On the right-hand side, you see the work of Lev Manovich, who is here, and Nadav Hochman. They took in, 48,000 photographs, I mean, many photographs, and kind of ordered them according to color, according to date, according to time and space. So it really is a beautiful clin d'oeil, a beautiful way to look at the collection. Also, you know, just to mention other people that are in the audience, this magazine, which is a magazine online, just came out with the data issue that gathers a lot of interesting essays that are also by artists, and so on and so forth. There's so much of this that comes out every day. And tonight, to talk about it, we have four great, great individuals. I'm going to talk about them in order of appearance. The first is going to be Hilary Mason. And wait, because I always am so bad with titles, because I only only know that I love people and that I would just listen to them for hours, and then I forget why. So Hilary is the founder and CEO of Fast Forward Labs, which is a machine intelligence research company. She's also data scientist in residence at Accel Partners. And she's had a lot of chief scientist position, and she also has a past as a hacker, and she's part of the Brooklyn Hacker Collective NYC Resistor. And she's one of our goddess of data, so happy to have her here. Second will be Mark Hansen. Mark Hansen joined the Columbia Journalism School in 2012, and he directs the Helen Gurley Brown Institute, which I love that it's called that way. But for digital, what is it? Tell me what is the Brown Institute is. It's data and media, media and technology. Okay, media and technology. It's the Helen Gurley Brown Institute. But he also has a past of alliance with data visualizers and artists, because he also runs the OCR, which is the Office for Creative Research, together with Jer Thorpe and Ben Rubin. So great knowledge about both art and visualization and data. Then we will have Hannah. Hannah Donovan is a designer and speaker, and she just moved to New York City to work at Ripcord, which is a creative technology company that's backed by Viacom. So she has this beautiful past in design and music. She was at Last FM, which is a suggestion music engine in London, and then she also was the co-founder of This Is My Jam. So it's about data and music, and we know how important and discussed that's been lately. And last but not least, we're going to have Aaron Koop, who is the head of engineering, internets, and the computers at the Cooper Hewitt Smithsonian National Design Museum. He has a past as a senior engineer at Flickr that was focusing on all things geo, machine tag, and galleries related. And before that, she was at Stamen Design in San Francisco. That's how we met years ago when we first brought Stamen's work into the museum's collection. So we're going to be here to listen to them and then also to listen to you. I'm going to call first Hilary here, and I'm so pleased that you're all here. Hilary.